Hey everyone, and welcome back to What's Your Favorite Scary Story? This episode, I'd like to thank Briana for voice acting. She's our only voice actor for this episode. But I think we have some pretty good stories for this one, which we're going to start with A Poor Old Grandpa.
The Grandfather. My grandfather told me this story about how one time he was sitting in a chair in front of the house when he heard his wife repeatedly calling him from inside the house. The thing is, my grandmother passed away a few years before that, but he told me that the voice was so pressing that he actually got up to look inside the house, and as soon as he got inside, he heard a loud crash behind him and turned around to see that the chair he had been sitting on moments ago had been crushed by the cast iron gutter that fell on it. If he hadn't come inside the house, he would have probably been seriously injured. I don't know if it's paranormal or not, but every time I think about it, it sends chills down my spine.
I wouldn't really say that one was scary, but I kind of liked where it went and thought it was a little sweet in a way. But let's move on to our next story.
The Crib Shadow. I was babysitting my niece once while I was staying at my brother's place, and they had the baby camera set up so I could see her on the little TV it came with. I was studying and starting to doze off when I heard some whispering and realized it was coming from the monitor. I initially thought it was some feedback or something, but when I looked at the TV, there was a dark shadow near my niece's crib. I have never been more terrified in my life, but the shadow was clearly there where it had not been before. I ran to my niece's room and looked around and saw nothing, but I took her the hell out of there. I went back to the TV, and the shadow was clearly gone. I told my brother what happened, and he pulled me aside and told me not to mention it to my sister-in-law because she'll freak out, but that he had seen the same thing several times now, with the same whispering. They stayed in that house for about 4 more years, and when my niece was just learning to talk, she would tell her mom about her special friend. To this day, it scares the heck out of me. When they moved out, my brother told me my niece had become inconsolably sad because she would miss her friend. Her mom would tell her she could bring him along, but all she would say is that he couldn't leave the house. We have never to this day told her about that damn shadow, and she apparently never saw it.
I think we could all agree that that was a pretty solid story, but let's see if this next story can top that one.
Mommas Danger. So I live in Eastern Oregon, and my mom lives in Western Oregon. I went to visit her for the summer, and she's very outdoorsy, so we decided to take a 1-hour drive from our city to the coast. We ended up at this free campsite at the top of this hill, and we were the only campers there. We relaxed for the rest of the day, made food, and etc. A truck full of men drove up the hill and talked with my mom. I don't know what it was about. I wasn't suspicious at the time, and they left us. Fast forward to the middle of the night. I woke up to my mom sitting up straight in the tent. I wake easily, so I heard her gasp, and it woke me up. As soon as she saw I was awake, she put her hand over my mouth because I was starting to ask her what's wrong. It was dead silent, and all of a sudden, I heard footsteps right beside the tent. The little flap that covers the zipper was even moving. Thankfully, my mom had quick wits and said very loudly,
"Kenny, grab the gun!"
Kenny is my dad, although that doesn't matter, and mind you, he was not there. Just us girls, like I previously said. They left and no harm was done. Thank the Lord for my mama.
And finally, let's move on to our last story, which might be the best one of them all.
Ouija board knocks back. In high school, my friends and I were messing around with the Ouija board one night. We had done it before, and nothing remarkable had ever happened. We usually did it to try and scare each other, or our girlfriends. We all thought it was a joke. That night, there was no one else home except the 7 of us, and we were all together around the board. One of the girls there wanted to try it. She had never done it before. This time was different. The board misspelled some of the words the same way every time. It gave answers that seemed really historically accurate for our town, things we never knew or cared about. Long story short, The spirit claimed it was a 10-year-old boy who had died on the property in the 1800s and was buried there too, in an unmarked grave. My friend's house was on a farm in the edge of town. We were all a little freaked out because the board had never been so detailed and consistent. However, we were still skeptical and we were all assuming one of us was trying to scare the rest. Finally, my friend asked if the spirit could do something to prove he was there with us. It went to yes, and then spelled out K-N-O-C-K. Knock. Then the planchette stopped moving. We just all stared at it silently, and then there was a knock on the window, right next to us. The lights were on outside, and there was absolutely no one there. We never touched that board again.
Personally, I really like the Ouija board story. So, I think the order for this episode of the best story to the worst story will probably be the Ouija one, the Crib Shadow, Mommas Danger, and the Grandfather. I really like the Grandfather, but I wouldn't say it's a horror tale per se, so that's why I have it as last, but I do really like that short story. So thank you everyone for watching. Leave some comments below if you know a scary story. But let's flash forward to the next review.